Hello and welcome to part one of the first video in the Venice project series. I've decided to break up the first video into three sections to avoid fatigue and also because it naturally falls into that division. So in the first section we're going to be launching Unreal. I'm just going to show you the basic interface so it doesn't appear too scary and bring in some basic content. And at that point, you may decide, yeah, I want to play with this for a bit, and that's absolutely fine. In the second section, we're going to be going to the Venice asset pack, and we are going to walk around that. We're going to bring in some characters and some animation, and then there'll be a short break. And then in the third section, we're going to be using the sequencer to create a short walking movie through Venice. So I'm hoping all three of them in total will last no longer than an hour. There are some download files that you'll be using in the second of the videos for this section. But for the time being, we're just going to, assuming you've already loaded Unreal Engine, we're going to open the folder with the downloaded files. If you are following along with this and you haven't got the Venice files, that's absolutely fine. If you just go to the Epic launcher and launch Unreal Engine 4.24, you'll be able to follow along with this. But I'm going to launch this by launching this here. Now, what you will find is this was actually created in the engine version 4.18, but I think I've got various versions on my machine, but I haven't got 4.18 anymore. So it's saying to me, do I want to launch it with another version? Yes, I want to launch it with 4.24, so I'm going to click OK. If anything takes too long in this video, I will just politely pause and return. So this is the launch screen you get. Subsequently, you should be able to launch this from the Unreal Engine launcher. So here we are. Let's just walk through the interface. This is a default blank screen. There's not a lot going on, so it's not too busy, so I can explain in essence what's what. So on this side here are the built-in elements that come with the Unreal Engine, and they range from lights to basic geometric shapes to various kind of visual effects and building blocks, which I'll come to in the video that when we look at building in more depth. Then you have the viewport. This is where stuff happens. At the moment, I've just got a floor, player start object, and various things that create the environment, the sky as we'll see it. And these are listed down here in what's called the world outliner. If I click on any one of these, so player start is a particular type of object. If I press the F key, F will always center the chosen object in the viewport there, so you can quickly navigate to something. So if I was to go to floor, it will pull out so I can see the entirety of that particular object. We won't worry too much about the lighting elements here in this, other than as we add things to the scene, you'll see that it needs to update the lighting and you'll need to rebuild it, but we'll come to that as and when it happens. So as I mentioned, this very kind of basic scene, we have the viewport, the outliner here like this, and as I click through these various elements, you'll see that this section down here got two tabs. Make sure on the details one to see this. This lists the properties of the object chosen. So if I go to floor, you'll see it's got parameters for its location, its rotation, and its scale. And if I want to alter this, I can either type in numeric values or I can click and drag. And you can see the thing is getting larger in that direction, in that direction. Imagine it gets thicker if I do that. Yeah, there's a little point at the floor. Similarly with the location, I can move it there or I could rotate it. Yeah, that's very good. If I'm really unhappy with the decision I've just made, as with many programs, I can Control Z that and it returns me to where I was. So I can do it there like that, but we can also do it interactively by grabbing the handles that are on an object. I'm capturing this on a Windows machine, so I've got the luxury of buttons on my mouse, so I can click and drag and move around the viewport here like this. I can also use, for those on Macs or haven't got functionality in their mouse, I can use the arrow keys here like this. But these handles here, at the moment, I've got floor selected, so I could grab this and it'll move the floor in that direction. Grab that one, move it in that direction, move it up, so on and so forth. But I can change the handles on this to do the other aspects here, rotation and scale. W is the default key to return to movement. The next one along, E, gives me a widget that enables me to change the rotation. I can click and drag in any of these three planes here, and R gives me these little cubes that I can drag out to rescale accordingly. If you want to scale proportionally, then you can supposedly drag this white thing here, but I find it a bit fiddly to grab it. So you can just check this padlock here, and then these will all scale up in proportion to each other. Okay, so that's how you carry out basic manipulation of objects, and I can click and drag in the scene and move around. Down here, I haven't come to this one here, is where all the content is kept. At the moment, because this is the bare bones asset pack from KSS, all we've got is one folder here with, if I double click on this, you'll see got subfolders, and this is all the material for the Venice project that we're coming to later. So I'll just double click this to go to the top level, and I'll just demonstrate that at the moment this is the kind of building interface. If I press play, this will show me the actual thing running. There's not a lot in this scene. You can see now it's generated the kind of sky, which is kind of moving, and I can click and drag around this, but there is nothing to see. It's pretty dull. You see there's a sky there, and when we come to building, I'll show you how I can change the sky and the environmental effects. If I press escape, I can come out of this rather dreary environment. Now this blue thing here is actually showing me the player start. So let's pull out a bit and I can demonstrate that. Player start is a particular type of object that, press W to get the handles back again, that marks where your viewport starts from when you're working in this particular mode. Now, if I were to drag the player start, so it's actually piercing the floor, because it's actually scaled at the moment to be human size, it will say bad size. So it doesn't stop you from playing. It's just simply reminding you that you're partially obscured by the floor itself. So it's best to have it above the floor level, and then you won't get that message anymore. I can rotate the viewport so it starts in a different perspective, and move around so I could start. Just to demonstrate the principle, let's just go here. Use my arrow keys for it. So I put the player start there and click play. Now we're just floating in space, and the floor is over there like that. So I'd have to navigate back to it to actually be on the environment as such. So it's probably best to have the player start on terra firma. So let's just pull out. So I'll use the scroll wheel here, grab hold of player start, or in fact go here, press F, and then pull player start back. Now what you find, it can become quite fiddly to navigate around things, which is why this is a kind of three-dimensional program. You're working not as a flat object, but in things that exist in space. There are different views you can have on it. So I would have found that operation a lot easier if I'd changed from perspective view to top view, found my player start, there it is, just dragged it there, put it right bang center of the existing floor, and go back to perspective. And now it's where I want it to be. Now at the moment, as I say, it is not particularly interesting, and as a rationale for this, in order to make the asset pack as small and compact as possible, they've stripped out everything. But if you just want to do general prototyping, muck around, get a sense of building up a very primitive kind of environment, and then move around that, then what I suggest you do is add the starter content. This is a kind of collection of assets that contain materials, props, bits of architecture that you can drop into the scene. And you do that by going add new if you've not chosen to create a new project with it in. Add feature or content pack. Content pack, I tend to add the mobile one because I'm just using it for mocking up stuff. The starter content, the full fat one, is more heavyweight, but it takes up more memory. So just click that, add project, and then what you'll find is, if I go to the top level here again, that I've now got a new folder called mobile starter content, and that includes a whole raft of other materials. So instead of here, now I could drag in very primitive shapes here. This is the kind of very basic material that you wouldn't really spend a lot of time mucking around with. I can use the handles, go E, R, W to move, scale, rotate these various objects. But so much more interesting to use at least the variety offered here. So we've got some basic walls. If I wanted to build up a mock-up, say a studio or a building, I could do this with these elements. The units here, 1 unit in Unreal is equivalent to 1 centimeter, so this would be a 5 meter by 5 meter wall, and the others accordingly. So I can just click and drag these into the scene, and I can then use my WER to scale, move, and if I need precision or need to line things up, then I can drag a lot of them in. So if I wanted this to line up roughly with this cube, then I could do it probably easier from top down or maybe from a side view, depending on the nature of the object, and then return to my perspective. So that's all great. The other thing that it brings in is materials. At the moment, these are kind of well-gripped materials. They're kind of flat and dull. But here, usually the first thing I do just to liven my day up a little bit is to add the grass material to the floor, and then something maybe like the sandstone, which is under S. Yeah, sandstone for the kind of wall. I have to add it to the floor now. So let's go back, drop the grass back on there. You see, I could do it here because now I've added materials. I can use this drop down to select materials this way. So I've added a brick wall to the wall, which is okay. And any other element I can do likewise with. Now, as I mentioned earlier, this is the point at which the lighting needs to be rebuilt. This is not something to worry about, but it's something you may want to synchronize with going for a cup of tea or a comfort break. Just click build. Depending on the complexity of the scene, it can take anything from seconds to minutes. When it's done, shouldn't worry about that. When it's done, then you get an error box. You just click that away, and now the shadows and the lighting is all kind of appropriate. So very simply with this, in addition, you've got things like particles. So I could, for no reason whatsoever, add an explosion or fire going on there, and then when I play the thing back in the viewport, navigate around. At the moment, I've turned physics off, which is a reason why objects hover in space, but I can apply physics to this, so forces such as wind and gravity will actually be meaningful. There's your fire there. Obviously, it doesn't really kind of make sense just happening with nothing to combust, so I might bring in some more assets like twigs or something that makes sense and move that around and maybe scale it up so it gets more severe over a period of time. What else we got in there? It's some props. So these are very kind of generic things here. And the one other thing that you might want to bring in, and will give you sufficient to get a sense of building a world, and you could disappear off and just get lost doing that, is to bring in a human scale figure. Now there isn't one in the mobile starter content, to the best of my knowledge. But what you can do is you can go to the marketplace. This is the Epic Launcher marketplace here. I've already got this, so I'm not going to be able to download it again. But if I go to the marketplace, and you can buy this, buy it in the sense that it doesn't cost you anything. If you've already got an account, then it will just download it for free, and then it will appear in your library, this tab here, and you can just add it to the engine. So if you tap in mannequin man mobile, that should be enough. Here it is. See, I've already downloaded it, so it's owned. If I click on it, I click on it in my library in this instance, so I've already owned it. So I could go down to my library and search for it. There it is. Click Add to Project. Now your project is likely called UE40. Yep. Click that, add it to the project. Doesn't take very long because it's quite a small element. Okay, that should be done now. So I just Alt Tab, and all things being right with the world, there it is. So now what I can do, I'll just use this primarily for scaling purposes because I can't really get a sense of a world and whether things I bring in actually look right until I've got some sense of human proportion. So I can bring that in. I can start building environments and worlds, adding materials to them, and developing quite complex scenes, moving the player start and then navigating through that world. That's where I'm going to stop this first section of the first video. So feel free to go away, play with that, develop your own kind of worlds. If you want to save, I'm not doing it here because I'm screen capturing and it tends to cause a bit of a wobbly. If you want to save the level and return to at any point, you go File, Save Current, or Save Current As if you've already saved it and want to do a copy of it, and then that will save the level. When you come back into the engine itself, if you created several levels, you can use this filter here and just filter out everything but the levels themselves. So I might have called this level Test 1, and then Test 1 will appear here, double click it, and then I'll be launched back into where I was. Okay, that's all I want to cover in this particular session, and we'll return for part 2 of part 1 shortly. Thank you.